I'm Jason Mefford, and I'm here with Brad Miller. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about an experience that Brad had this morning, because it's a good reminder, and you'll get the gist as we're going along. So Brad, I know before we hit record, we were talking about your morning. So fill everybody in, because I think this is going to be the prompt for a great discussion today that's going to give people a lot of information that they need to hear.
Yeah. So I know, Jason, you're big into music and sound and songs and things like that. And a lot of times I've talked about how you kind of wake up in the morning with a song in your head. And for you, that generally has some meaning behind it, whether it's the lyrics, something in there's something in there for you to get, right? Mm-hmm. So this morning I woke up and I didn't necessarily have a song in my head when I woke up, but I got going. I've had to get my daughter, get her out of bed, start getting her ready for school. And while I was doing that, a song came into my head. And if you're familiar with Pink, the artist Pink, you may know the song "I Never Want to Not Dance Again." And that was a song that jumped into my head. And sometimes I get songs like this that pop into my head for various reasons. Something that I maybe listened to recently and just having to pop back or whatever. And this was a song that I did hear the other night when we went roller skating. In fact, my wife really likes the song, and so she requests it often. And so this played, and so that was kind of going through my head, like, well, I'm sure it's just kind of a residual from that, right? For when we played it and listened to it on
Sure. Let's discount it. Let's play it down, right? Everybody's got to hear the rest of the story to understand why it wasn't that.
Well, at that time in the morning, you're getting up, you haven't really had anything yet in you. You're trying to get my daughter moving. And so, that's just kind of what hits in my head, must be something, whatever. But it's a fun song. It's upbeat. It's, kind of gets moving. So I'm like, well, this would be a good song to kind of get going to, maybe to play it, to listen to it, use that to get some energy, some going. Okay, great. We get going, get her on the bus. If I wrap up, clean up from breakfast, and then come into my office. And every morning, one of the very first things that I do, I sit down at my desk and I draw an animal card. And for those of you who don't know what that is, we'll play the show and tell here. Mm-hmm. So these are the medicine cards, the animal cards that I use. And if you're not watching this video, you should stop right now and switch over to the YouTube so you can watch the video and you can see the fun show and tell we've got going on here. But these, as you can see, the box is pretty worn and the lid's off. And again, these are heavily used. So every morning I draw a card, and I use to give me some inspiration, some ideas for things for the day, something maybe to focus on. And so today, shuffled the deck and did my deal. And the card that I pulled out was the grouse, which is a bird that is known for the intricate patterns it does when it moves. Specifically, grouse's sacred spiral. It talks about the dance that the grouse does. So here was kind of dance coming up again. At that point, I'm like, okay, the song's been going through my head all morning. Now I pulled out a card about dance, about movement and things like that. And my first thought was, well, maybe this is talking about just me getting up and moving around and, shaking my booty or whatever it might be. But as I was reading through,
are we going to get to see that on the podcast now?
No, that is not part of the show and tell today.
It's your beauty.
I said that's a different podcast.
Okay,
and that one's $9.99 a minute if you want to see that one.
1888 or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, you've got a special code for that one. But so I was reading through what grouse meant, and in the definition talks about that the sacred spiral, which is what grouse is one of the oldest known symbols for personal power. And I've had this card before, and when I've gotten it, I've tended to focus on things like, movement, about moving around and things, and how you move through the world and through life and stuff like that. But today, this idea of personal power really jumped out at me. And it kind of stuck at me as like, hey, this is something important, for whatever reason. Okay. And I sat there a little bit and, didn't immediately, nothing immediately came to say, hey, this is what this is all about for you. So I'm like, okay, great. Finish stuff up. And then put everything away, started getting ready to start my day. So, I'm sure many people, one of the first things you do in the morning is you turn on your computer and you pull up your email, right? That's kind of a standard thing, see what I've missed or whatever there. And one of the emails, it's a daily newsletter that I sign up for. It's by Seth Godin, and it's basically just his daily blog post. I get an email that includes the blog post so I can read it. And if you don't know Seth Godin, definitely go check him out. He talks about all kinds of business stuff, things that would relate to the professionals listening to this, I think. But what caught my attention was the fact that the title of his blog post today was Dancing for the Early Adopters.
Okay, so for everybody listening now, right? Because again, I mean, we're talking about walking the spiritual path, right?
Yep.
And one of those things is receiving or getting messages from the universe, right? So here we go. Brad gets up. He has a song in his mind that has the word dancing in it.
It's about dancing and moving and things. Yep.
Yeah. He pulls an animal card that is grouse, that is a dancing bird. Mm-hmm. And then he opens or looks at an email that has the word dance in it as well, right? So dancing and personal power, there's some message coming through to Brad, right? And so I think one thing for everybody to think about, especially if you're earlier on your path, a lot of times we'd say, oh, that's just a coincidence. Kind of like Brad said right at the beginning, right? Oh, I heard that Pink song a couple days ago, so I'm sure that's just a coincidence, right? So then the universe hits him again with the grouse card, right? Again, I don't know. Third time's the charm, folks, right? So if you start to see things like that in patterns of 3, pay attention.
The rule of 3. Yep.
Pay attention, right? Because, just like if you see 3 animals together, that's an omen. That's the universe trying to tell you something because of the number 3. And for a lot of other reasons, most animals don't go around in groups of 3. You'll see 1 or you'll see 2, right? Like you'll see 2 doves all the time. But if you see 3 doves together, that probably means something, right? Or anything that's maybe a little bit out of the ordinary as well, right? And so, the grouse and spirals and dance. Another thing with grouse too is it's a reminder that any step you take on your spiritual path is perfect. It doesn't want perfection. The grouse isn't asking for perfection. It's just asking you to take one little step at a time, right? So interesting. So you figured out what it means, Brad? And again, you don't have to share with people because again, when we get these, a lot of times the meaning or the reason is personal, right, for us. And so again, maybe it's appropriate to share, maybe it's not. That's fine, right? I mean, that would be up to Brad. But there's some message coming through, right?
Yeah, no, still working on it, still trying to figure out exactly what it's supposed to be going forward. So after this, actually, we finish recording this episode, I'll probably go and sit in some silence and see if I can come with something.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting again. I mean, it just because of some of the stuff that you brought up, I figured we'd maybe talk a little bit about it. Maybe I'll share one of my experiences too. But the grouse and the way it does its dance is in a spiral, like you said, right? And a spiral is a sacred symbol. There's a lot of meanings behind it, and whether it's clockwise or counterclockwise can mean different things as well. But with it, in what I have noticed a lot of the times too, is I will do things in spirals, right? So for example, when I'm clearing energy and using something like a smudge, sage, Palo Santo, something like that, a lot of times I will find myself, right? My body is just doing it when I just let it do what it needs to do in a spiral, right? So a lot of times when I'm saging myself, I will go in a spiral, and usually it's a counterclockwise spiral. So I'll actually like put it around my head. And how many times do I do it? I usually do it 3 times. Why? Well, I've got an idea. I don't know exactly, but so
Just
again,
feels right.
it just feels right, and so that's what I do, right? And again, for people that are listening, we're not telling you to go do everything in spirals and to do everything in patterns of 3, right? Like open the door, close the door, open the door, close the door, open the door,
I think that's
close
what
the
the
door.
dog does.
Yeah.
Spirals 3 times and sits down.
But it's interesting, yeah. If you will look at things like dogs, they do that regularly, right? And so again, just look around, right, at what goes on. I've got hummingbirds out in my backyard. Now, normally you just see hummingbirds come up to the feeder and leave. I have hummingbirds that sit there with me the whole day. They just sit on my birds of paradise, and they will do certain patterns. Sometimes they fly in, they'll go up, they'll fly in a spiral, they'll land back down. They'll go up, they'll fly in a spiral pattern, and they'll sit back down. Right now, that's unusual behavior necessarily from what we normally see from hummingbirds. So there's another example of, hey, maybe I should pay attention to what I am observing. What am I thinking about? What thoughts come into my head at that point, right? When those things end up happening, right? Because a lot of times too, when things kind of come to your mind out of the ordinary, or that seem kind of random, and especially if you start to see these things in patterns, start paying attention, right? So as an example, I've one of the songs that came into my head actually yesterday, I think it was yesterday morning or the day before, when I got up, was the song Midnight Train to Georgia by Gladys Knight, right? And I've had some questions. I've been searching for certain answers, and that song popped into my head. It's a great song. It's catchy, Midnight Train to Georgia, right? But I pulled out my phone and I looked at the lyrics, right? Because again, usually we just listen to songs, we kind of get the beat, we kind of, go along with it, right? But this time I actually listened to the lyrics, right? Because part of it, again, was me trying to figure out maybe some of the next steps in my life, right? Like, should I
Moving to
move?
Georgia.
Right? Should I move to Georgia, right? Because again, when that popped into my head, let me pull it up here on my phone, right? So let me see if I can get back to it so I can get to the lyrics. Is because what's interesting, right, is, let me start. Okay, because I can't play it on here because we don't want to violate any intellectual property.
All
But
the
what's
IP
interesting,
lawyers that may be
yeah,
listening.
all the IP lawyers that are listening are like, ah, I'm gonna get you. No, I stopped it. But But again, what's interesting, right, is that song popped into my head, right? Because I've had some thoughts about maybe it's time for me to move somewhere else. Where, I don't know yet. I'll figure it out when I figure it out, right? I have some ideas, but I don't know. So I'm listening, right, to whatever is coming through from the universe to try to help me in understanding what I need to do, right? And so again, when that song popped into my head, I'm like, Midnight Train to Georgia? Hell no, I'm not moving to Georgia. I don't like Georgia, right? Again, nothing against Georgia.
Peaches and pecans.
It's just not, it just doesn't feel like the place to me, right? Now, at that point, I could have just pushed it out and said, screw that, right? But I was like, no, I'm going to do what I do when the songs come into my head. I listen to them. In fact, I've been listening to this song many times for the last few days. And like I said, I pulled it up, and guess what? The first line of that song is that I had never heard before. LA proved too much for the man. Now, where do I live? Los Angeles area, right? So is the universe trying to tell me something? Probably, right? Do I have all the answers yet? Nope, but I'm a step closer, right? Now, what about Georgia, right? Well, when the song was playing, I wasn't thinking of the place Georgia. But when it got to that point in the song, a couple of images flashed into my head that have a meaning tied to the name Georgia. Nothing to do with the place, right? And again, those are things for me, right? But there was a reason. In fact, there's several different lines in that song that help to give me some of the answers to get a little closer to where I need to be, right? And so again, it's I could have just discounted it and said, screw it, I'm not going to listen to it. Or I can choose to listen to it over and over again, recapitulate it, right? What is this trying to tell me? And get more and more information from the universe. Because when we do that, more comes, right? Because again, if you just think about it, like just even you and me, Brad, right? If if you ask a question to me, right? You're like, hey, Jason, what's the temperature outside? I don't know. I'm just making something up, right? And you ask a question, I'm like, it's 71 degrees. I'm going to say it soft, right? Now, if you choose not to hear it, if you're not tuned in, you might not hear it. I might be over here the whole time going, it's 71 degrees. Brad, it's time to dance, right? But when you hear it and you start communicating back and forth, right? The more you listen, the more you hear, the more the universe will continue to talk to you, right? If Brad just ignored me, I'm probably not going to say much more to Brad, right? But if he's listening and he's communicating with me and he starts to make it a two-way communication, I'm going to keep talking to Brad. Now, most of
talk.
Huh?
Because you like to talk, so
I like to talk. Is that my shut up, Jason? Okay. No, but what's interesting, right? Because a lot of people are like, the universe doesn't talk to me. Well, are you listening? Because maybe it is, but if you're not acknowledging it, it's going to shut up, right? Because it usually doesn't come and beat you over the head. Now, sometimes it will. Sometimes it will. You'll get the spiritual 2x4 to the head, right? But that's after you haven't listened for a long time.
That's something
right?
really important that you need to be listening to.
Really
Yeah.
important that you need to listen to, and you need to listen to it right now, right?
Mhm.
Most of the time they come in the nudges, just like what Brad was talking about. Oh, song about dancing. Oh, the quail. Oh, dancing in an email, right? So now Brad could have chosen to ignore it, but the messages would keep coming if it's something that he needs to hear. The sooner that we start to pay attention, the sooner that we start to listen, the sooner we start to tune and hear, the more the universe will talk to you.
Yeah. 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 It took, sometimes it takes you a couple times, like you said, sometimes it's kind of a gentle, kind of a delicate nudge. Hey, and like you said, that rule of three is a great one. If something comes up three times, I like to tell people there are no such thing as coincidences in life. Everything happens for a reason. And if something's happening three times, if you see three animals, like I see, oftentimes I'll see three crows, um, maybe in a yard or something as I'm driving. There's something there. It's not just that two happened to be chilling out and the third one came up and said, "Hey, how you guys doing, neighbor?" And they're just having a picnic. Like there's something there that's the message.
They got the red and white checkered tablecloth laid out on the ground.
And yeah, well, and the fun part is that group of crows is actually, because there's a group, it's a murder. So you do the yeah, put that together. What does that mean? But yeah.
Well, and these things can come in little ways, and I think one of the other things to bring up is don't don't try to read more meaning into it as well, because I think sometimes we want it to mean a certain thing, and so we'll let
Mhm.
our ego get in the way, or we think we understand what it's supposed to mean and don't just allow, right? And so again, yesterday, when I got up, somebody that I know came to my mind, right? And I kind of got the little hit, like, well, I was feeling gratitude for the person, right? They came into my mind. I was feeling gratitude because of some of the things that they've done for me or ways they've helped me. And then I kind of got the feeling like, you should reach out to that person and maybe see if they want to be interviewed on the podcast. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's kind of weird, but whatever, right? So I kind of put the intention that that's what I would do. But then I kind of got busy with my day, and I came back in and I was looking at Facebook. And I usually don't scroll through the feed on Facebook. Sometimes I will, because I'll do kind of what I think of, or my intention is sharing the love. So I'll sometimes sit down and spend 15 minutes just going through my feed, and I don't
Like love. Yeah.
yeah, I usually love, because I like to share love instead of like on the
Mhm.
internet. So I'll love posts. I'll actually read them, and I'll try to make a thoughtful comment to it as well, right? And so I'll just spend a few minutes. What I try to think of is me sharing love on Facebook, right? A place where there's a lot of shit, that I'm trying to spend, a few minutes sharing love and hope and peace with people on there. And so, like I said, I normally don't do that, go through my feed, unless I have a particular intention of doing that. But I found myself just scrolling, and sure enough, guess what? This person who I was thinking of, who doesn't post very much on Facebook, was in my feed. So again, it was all right, I stopped what I was doing. I sent the person a Facebook message. Now, where it goes, I don't know. The person said they were interested. Are they going to get back to me? Are they going to do it? I don't know. And it doesn't really matter, right? What matters is I heard it and I did something about it, regardless of what the outcome happens to be, right? Because again, that's part of what we're trying to learn here is, can you hear, can you follow the guidance, even if the guidance doesn't turn out to be what you think it is, are you willing to hear? And are you willing to do something about the guidance that you're given? And the more you do that, the more the universe is going to provide you with that.
Yeah, you got to go in without expectation. I think that's a big thing. You can't expect or be looking for some answer one way or the other. Like I can't go and say, well, I want this song about dancing. I want this to mean that I'm supposed to have a dance party with my daughter. Like
Saturday night dance party at the Miller's house.
Like that might be what it is, but I can't go in thinking like, oh, this is what I want to happen. Like I have to go in basically kind of a clean, blank slate of, whatever it is what it is. And it's not going to be good. It's not good, bad, it's just all neutral, just is. And because if I go in with that expectation of, hey, I'm looking for a dance party. What are we doing about this dance party? It's going to dilute the message. It's going to keep me from actually hearing what I'm supposed to be hearing, because my brain's going to be trying to focus over here, and the voices or the messages are going to be telling me something over here. So
Good episode. Lots of information for people in this. And I think we'll talk about a lot of different things, but one, on the podcast, but I think this is one of the foundational things, is to learn how to listen and to start to recognize and understand how those messages can come through, because there's messages all around us, right? I just happen to get a lot of messages from music, but that's me, right? Other people might get them in different ways. And what's important is for everybody to start paying attention and start understanding how you're getting the messages, and then try to tune into it more, right? Because it's a practice. That's why all the stuff that we usually talk about on here are practices. Right? Learning how to place that awareness and how to listen, that's a practice. It takes time. You don't have to get it the first time. If it takes you 4 or 5 times, it doesn't matter, right? The important
4 or 5 years.
For 4 or 5 years. The important thing is, right, that you're practicing and you're getting better every day, which goes back to the grouse card too that Brad pulled, right? Because again, grouse is not expecting perfection. If you get up and dance, it's not expecting your dance to be perfect. It's just the fact that you showed up and you danced, right? There's that, I think, Leanne Womack song, right? I hope you dance, right? That's a great song, too, if people want to go back and listen to it, right? But the whole point of, sometimes life doesn't go the way that you think it's going to go. Life doesn't turn out perfectly the way you think it does, but I hope you dance, right? Because regardless of what's going on, getting up, moving around, even if it's in your chair like this, right? Because old white man can't dance that well, but I still dance. In fact, this morning when I was listening to my morning playlist, I broke down and it was kind of silly. I was in the restroom and I looked in the mirror and I was listening to my music and I did a stupid little dance, but it made me smile. And it doesn't matter how you dance. It doesn't matter how long you dance for. Just whatever music is playing in your life at the time, dance and work through it.
And that music might be metaphorical too, not actual music.
Could be. Maybe we're talking on multiple levels in what we're talking about. Maybe we are. But that's for everybody listening to figure it out. And whether you figure it out or you don't figure it out, it doesn't matter, right? But the fact that you're still listening to this means there was something in today's episode that you needed to hear. So now just go and take that step, right? You heard something from the universe. Now just go take a step. Just go do something about it, right? And that's the important thing, taking that step, one step at a time, one day at a time.
Love it. Love it. And now time for the dance off. So we're gonna.
I know a Casey and the Sunshine Band was in. You talked about shaking your booty, and I'm like, shake your booty, it's your beauty. I said, shake, shake, shake. Anyway, if you want to get going, put on some Casey and the Sunshine Band. There's nothing better than a little disco to get your booty moving.
The 70s, there was something going by the 70s. They knew what to get you going. So
bring your boogie shoes, anyway. Right. All that stuff.
And with that, we're gonna wrap this up. Where they kick us off the air for our dance moves. So again, thank you guys for listening. Hope you found something from this episode that you can take back and be like, and kind of sit with and maybe resonates with you a bit. Whether that's paying attention to stuff a little bit better, or maybe that's dance like nobody's watching, whatever it might be, just have some fun with it. Hopefully something there for you. And if you liked the episode, if you found benefit, if you want more of this stuff, I can't guarantee that I'll be dancing anymore, but I'm sure we could convince Jason too. So let us know, please, in the comments. Reach out and say we want more Jason dancing, and I'm sure we'll be willing to make something like that happen. So with that, thank you guys, and we'll catch you next time.
All right, see you, everybody. Thanks.